All right, looks like I'm finally live now. So, hello everyone and welcome back. So, I know it's been a while and I'm sorry about the clunky thing in front of me here, but I am trying to make it so that my audio quality is the best that it can be because I am actually going to be turning these live streams into a podcast. But before we get too far into that, I just want to get into the intro. I will be cutting this out in the podcast, obviously, but for YouTube, let's get into the intro. All right, everyone, so we are back, and I just have to get used to being live again. So, essentially, I have a few things I want to talk about today, including this new project of mine, but again, I apologize for this thing. It is not the greatest, but this microphone actually does sound really, really good via audio and all of that, so I really want to use it. And I actually got it set up with the table that I use for using my Mac, so I'm really excited about that, and I'm hoping this will improve the videos just a little bit. Again, audio really matters when you're podcasting, which is why I want to use this microphone. And this microphone is quite bulky, but it's, I don't know, it does sound really good. So all of that is kind of a little bit of a trade-off, but it's all good. I'll figure it out, and maybe after some time I can get a different one, but all of that. But so I want to talk about a few things today. The biggest one is why I haven't been around doing much content, and the second is about this podcast and what I'm hoping to achieve with it. And then the third is kind of the little topic we're going to get into today, which is the reason why I'm not upset, I guess, about why I've had to push back heavily on the amount of content that I'm able to push out right now. So I didn't make title slides today. I wanted to play around. I actually just downloaded Final Cut Pro 10 or X, or however you want to say that. I finally have a Mac and a computer that can actually run the program, so I took and bit the bullet essentially today and I downloaded that app. So I will need a little bit before I give a review or talk about it much at all, because I haven't really been making any edited content. I'm gonna have to take a long time probably to use this and get used to this new thing. It is quite different, although kind of similar to what iMovie was, but just stepped up its game several notches, I guess. So that's gonna take a little bit of getting used to, and then I want to get this podcast running, so that's gonna take a little bit. Going forward though, as long as I'm not busy doing anything else, so I don't have anything planned, like example, my trip at the end of October, or I'm gonna be away, live streams will be on Sundays at 4 o'clock my time, which is the exact time I went live today, so you guys can get an idea of where the time zone is, although it does change a little bit once the time changes back, and we don't observe daylight savings time here, so that's why it'll change, because for the places that do, because we don't change, there's a little bit of a change. So I will let you guys know about that sooner to the time, because it will be a Sunday that the time changes, and then it'll change. But I really want to focus on my live content, because I honestly think this allows me to be and do the best type of content, and I think it'll turn into the best podcast content as well. So that's kind of where I'm leaning with that. The podcast is going to take a little bit to launch, so I will make another announcement when that actually goes live. It's just kind of in the first part of the stages, but I've got an intro ready to go, and I will be using this particular video for that and just cutting out the stuff that I don't want to include in that, essentially, which is going to take me learning how to edit that, which I kind of did on the audio editing app that I'm going to be using, which is GarageBand, which is included in the Mac. And so I kind of did that with my intro, so I have a little bit of an idea of how to do the basics, but I'm not sure how it's going to turn out when I actually take this and turn it into an audio-only file and then import that into GarageBand. And I have to learn how to do all of that, and I don't have a lot of time to play with besides on the weekends. And this week I'm going to have a little bit of an extra day, though, because of the national holiday we're recognizing at work, essentially. So I get an extra day this week on Wednesday, so I'm hoping to be able to play with that a little bit more then. So the podcast may not be out until next week. I apologize for that, but it's something that I wanted to announce and something I'm really looking forward to. So yeah, so that's kind of that. I want to get into, though, why I haven't been around. So getting into the topic of work, my hours are pretty much now almost full-time. I'm not full-time, but pretty much in terms of what I can handle and kind of where I want to be, maybe. Well, no, I'm pretty happy, actually. As long as I'm getting consistent days off, I'm okay with where I'm at. But with this particular position, it is pretty much full-time, which means that I don't have a lot of energy at the end of the day to work on creative projects, and I don't have a lot of extra days to also work on this content, which means that my content has been suffering. For those of you who really want shorts and all of that, I honestly don't know when I'm going to get back to that, how many there'll be a week if I do get back to that. It will depend if I'm able to stay ahead of it, and essentially there are a lot of things that go into those shorts. I do hope to get back to it eventually. I'm just not sure essentially when that might be. So we'll see. Between doing everything, though, like, this is a full-time job as well, so I cannot push myself to the point of burnout, and I may have been going through that a little bit with my creativity and all of that, because I reached a point where I really wasn't happy anymore, and I really wasn't wanting to put out my creative stuff. And that's usually a sign when I'm, at the point where I'm not enjoying something anymore, that's probably the reason for it, is I'm just a little bit burnt out. So I may take extended breaks for no reason, and I may not post a lot on social media. Actually, that's one of the things I've quite enjoyed lately, is that I really haven't been on social media all that much in the last month or so, and a lot of it is because I've been exhausted at the end of the day, and I haven't been in the mood to make content. So that's the honest truth with that. So yeah, I am also wanting to talk a little bit about why I am essentially really, really thankful, despite the fact that I do tend to get frustrated when I can't keep up with YouTube and my social media stuff and my awareness stuff, why I haven't been frustrated this time. And I think it's because when I reflect and sit down and have time to really, really think about where I'm at, right now, I am at the place that I dreamed and really wanted very, very badly when I was at my worst essentially in 2019, when I was at my worst. So, just gonna see here if I can find this. This one? Yes, it is. Okay, so I talked about the peaks and valleys, and for those of you who are on the podcast right now, you won't be able to see this picture, but I'm going to do my best to describe it. So I've got, essentially, it looks like a valley and all of that, and at the bottom there's a white dot with an arrow pointed down, kind of showing the decline into 2019, which is when I was dealing with diagnosis and medications and all of that. My worst was when I was on the pyramid in May of 2019. That's when I was on the topiramate and the acetazolamide at once. I think I tolerated that for about 3 or 4 weeks. And then from there, it got a little bit better after I came off the topiramate. So kind of going up the hill a little bit. But then I really started to accelerate when I went on the Aimovig. And so that's kind of what that picture is. And it's really important for me to stress that this picture is kind of what I've been referring to when I talk about going down into a valley and then kind of coming back up again. And I kind of feel like I'm reached the other side of the valley. And this means that I am at a place now where I could have only dreamed of just a few, even, well, months ago. It's amazing to compare and contrast, actually, where I am now compared to where I have been even like a year ago, because I'm doing things now that I never thought were possible again after I was dealing with the amount of fatigue that I was going through, the pain that I was experiencing, the fact that I would go sometimes, especially in the spring and fall, where I was really, really struggling. And this is very, very difficult to manage. It's very difficult to deal with. It's extremely frustrating because there's a point where, you're kind of maybe at a stable place, and then you start to push that boundary a little bit, and then you find out that you aren't as good of a place as what you thought. This has actually been the opposite for me lately. So, because I have been working a pretty much a full-time position, this position is not quite as active physically as what being a cashier was in the position that I was before, but I still stand for 8 hours a day. I still am quite active. It's a very physical job because there's a lot of up and down and bending, and actually that did scare me a little bit because when I bend over like this, if I don't kneel down and try to keep my head up, I can actually cause myself some dizziness, especially if I do that for too long a prolonged time. So I have adapted a bit to the situation, and I've adapted so that I'm not bending over, but that I'm actually working it so that I kneel down and that I'm not actually bending, and I minimize any bending. There are even times where I have to bend from my knees as well, but it's not a totally prolonged thing. And I'm actually in fairly good physical shape. I've been noticing a little bit of weight gain in the last little bit, and this, I think, has multiple reasons. I haven't been exactly great with following my basics, so like making sure I'm not drinking my calories, making sure that, treats are only treats, and all of that kind of stuff. You kind of fall off the wagon a little bit and kind of get kicked back on, and it's very, very difficult, of course, having a full-time job and squeezing in even 30 minutes of exercise. I did actually manage to get in my exercise today. Unfortunately, I didn't prop it up on here to share it, but I did go about 6.2 miles on the bike, which is great. Sundays are, again, not only my live stream day, but I'm hoping to squeeze in my workouts there as well. Maybe eventually I'll be able to squeeze it in on the Wednesdays. That actually splits it up quite nicely. Ideally, I get up to 3 days a week, but I'll worry about that in a little bit and find out when that might work best for me. But going forward, this is really going to be difficult sometimes to squeeze in everything. But again, because of that really, really low place that I was, I'm just going to pull this up again. In May of 2019, I think it was actually kind of more April to May, but when I was on the topiramate, I was at my lowest. I could barely get off the couch. I wasn't able to function at all. I can't tell you how bad that felt and how frustrated. Well, I didn't really actually have time to feel frustrated because I was so sick. And there was a point last year where I was starting to get frustrated because I felt like, oh, maybe my gap in my resume is hurting me to a point. Okay, not last year, the year before that, when I was starting to look for work, because I keep forgetting I've been at the place I'm at for about a year now. So I guess it might have been, a year ago in about April or so. So maybe a year and a half ago, more than 2 years. But, kind of get the idea of time there. And it's because I was feeling much better and I felt like I was able to maybe start to do something, but I wasn't sure exactly where my limitations would be. And over the past year, that's actually what I've been trying to figure out. What are my limitations and how far can I go before I push myself too far? And so far, I found those limits a few times. So I talked about how burnt out I was in July, and that was mainly due to work. And so that's why there wasn't much content in the summer. I was really trying to recuperate from that. And now that we're kind of almost through September and I've had a very consistent schedule for a little bit, I can actually finally say I think I found something that not only will work, but that is going to be my career. And that's the most important thing to me, is that I am very, very happy. I'm the happiest I've been in a very long time. I know I've said that before and then come back and went, actually, maybe I'm not as happy as what I thought I was. I'm really, really starting to dig deep down and find out I'm not happy where I am. And I can honestly say now, no, this has probably been the best that I've been in many, many years. Probably since my first semester of fourth year of university, where I was doing almost all electives, so it was almost all classes I was interested in. And I mean, that last semester was awesome too in many ways, because it was all more classes that I was interested in with biochemistry. It was difficult too because it was so much information and like really difficult because it was all biochem classes. But I got sick also not very far into that semester, so I really wasn't able to soak it up and enjoy it. And so that first semester, fourth year, when I was feeling good and really, really enjoying school and finally felt like I'd found a group of people that I got along with outside of classes, it was probably my peak of my university experience. And I kind of feel like that now in a different way. And, I can see this being a long-term thing. And I think that's the most important thing to stress. So yeah, I'm not really sure if I have much else that I really want to talk about with this. It's just that I am at a place now that I only dreamed about a few years ago. And I honestly didn't think it was possible, as I said earlier. So when you're at the point where you can't even go a few hours without like really, really struggling with your energy levels or having migraines almost constantly, like around the time that I was at my worst, I can't remember a day that I had that I didn't have some type of head pain or headache. And now I really am kind of limited to migraines. Well, it depends on the weather. Like the weather actually does play a huge role in my migraines, but as long as the weather is behaving, which it's starting to kind of change again. So like fall and spring are always very, very rough depending on the weather changing and how much it goes up and down and back and forth and all of that. But besides the weather, the only other time that I really, really hurt and am really in a lot of pain is the week before my period. And so the fact that there's a lot of things that are now out of my control, but I try to, as I've said in previous videos, I try to control the things I can so that I can better prepare for those things that I can't. And it just helps with, so for those of you who are familiar with like the bucket analogy of migraines with the trigger, so your bucket is a certain amount full depending on the things that you cannot control. So by throwing in and tossing in all of those things that you can control, you can essentially make it so that your bucket's not overflowing, well, as best as you can. Sometimes the water's near the top and there's nothing you can do about it and it'll trigger a migraine. And I've actually had a few days already where I've had to work a full day with a migraine. Now, my migraines are also a lot different than what they were when I was at my worst in 2019. So, also when I was dealing with IIH as well, because my IIH wasn't in remission at that point. But with the migraines in particular, it's very different experience than it used to be when I was at my worst and not on the medication that I'm on now, which is the Aimovig. And that is that they're different. They're not as debilitating as they used to be. They feel different. I know I'm off. I know I'm not myself, but it's almost a loss in productivity versus a complete shutdown of my entire body. So it's a completely different experience, and although that loss in productivity is noticeable, and I do get frustrated by the way my brain is not as sharp and as quick as what it normally is, it's not the same as before when I was dealing with a complete total shutdown, need lights off, need to stay in the dark, almost have a nap, sleep through this because I can't tolerate it any longer, or have my ice helmet on. So, for those of you who are brand new, you probably haven't even seen me talk about this thing, but I used to have an ice helmet that I'd put on, and I actually highly recommend it if, like, I'm not even going to say the brand of it because you can find other similar type of things on, like, Amazon probably, but essentially it's like an ice cap, and whenever you're experiencing a migraine, it, like, covers your entire head. So that, and you can even get some that will cover up your eyes as well, because your eyes often do hurt quite a bit when you're having a migraine. But, or at least I know they did for me. And cold just feels so nice when you're in the midst of a migraine. I don't know about anyone else, but I've actually purposely had ice cream or, ice or something, so that you almost get like a brain freeze type feeling on your head, because that coldness and frozen feeling around my head and or in my jaw and all of that just felt so good when I was having a migraine. Maybe that's just me, but I know that a lot of people have talked about these ice helmets. So I say it definitely helped. I haven't had to use one in I don't even know how long. I still have it though in case I need it, but I haven't needed it. But yeah, so that's essentially the kind of what's been going on and all of that. And I know it kind of went off into a rambly rant there again, but that tends to happen on these live shows. So yeah, but I'm hoping you guys have enjoyed this one. So just gonna end it here. So let's see. Sorry, I gotta figure out here. Is it this? No, not that one. Not that one. Okay. Nope. Okay, I found it. Never mind. You can tell that I haven't done this in a while. Okay, so I'm just gonna get out my social media. So I have actually had to change this, so if you guys have saved this somewhere, make sure you guys have changed it as well. So I switched all of my Instagram information to Add Awareness with Ashley. My Facebook is just the same as my channel name. You can find me on Twitter as well. I'm quite active on Twitter, but I'm not just active with my IIH and migraine content. Like, if you want more of kind of the things that I enjoy and love to talk about, that would be where to find it. I honestly don't share much personal stuff on my Instagram, and TikTok I'm hardly ever on anymore because, I don't know, I just am not a crazy fan of shorts content. And like, when I've got shorts content to put out, I'll throw it up there, but it's not really a focus for me. Like, I really do like these live shows and I like this live content because it's stuff that I like to listen to or watch myself. Like, that's the type of content you'll find me watching on YouTube, is actually live content. So yeah, but I will just bring this up. So this little prompt here is for my locals page. So I don't have a Patreon, but I do have a locals page, and that is where you can find exclusive content, and I believe I have it set at about $2 a month. I've actually started writing articles on there and made one article that I talk about kind of more with the stuff I talked about today, with this, things I'm thankful for kind of with my job and all of that. And I've made it so that it's supporters only because I need to be able to trust the people that are going in there when I'm sharing more personal stuff, that they're not bots and that they're real people that actually care about all of this stuff, aren't trolls and all of that. So that's why I have that on there. And yeah, so that's, I think, the show for today. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I'm gonna just talk about this podcast just once again. So once I get this going, I will be sharing this particular episode, or at least a lot of it. I'm not sure how much I will share. Some of it will be edited out, but I will be sharing this episode eventually to the podcast, so you guys can watch that, and I will actually share when I do that. So yeah, that's it for now. I think that essentially that is it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next week for the next one. Bye, everyone.